Because what Max Verstappen has already done to Formula One isn't just domination, it's a quiet takeover of the sport's future. And when the 2026 era officially begins, the consequences won't just reshape the grid, they could fracture Formula One itself. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Formula One didn't design the 2026 regulations to crown a new superstar. They designed them to stop one. Yet somehow those very rules are lining up perfectly for the one driver the sport was desperate to slow down. And that contradiction is where this story truly begins. By 2026, Formula One will enter its most radical technical reset in decades. New power units, a 50-50 split between internal combustion and electrical energy, fully sustainable fuels, active aerodynamics, lighter cars, at least on paper. The governing body FIA has sold this as the dawn of a cleaner, closer, more competitive era. But behind the press releases and polished presentations lies an uncomfortable truth. Max Verstappen's influence is already baked into these rules. And no, not because he helped write them, because his driving style, mental framework and competitive psychology expose something Formula One hasn't been able to solve. What happens when a generational driver arrives faster than the sport can adapt? Think about this for a second. Since the start of the current ground effect era, in 2022, Verstappen has won races at a rate modern Formula One has almost never seen. In 2023 alone, he won 19 out of 22 races, an 86% win rate. That's not dominance, that's structural imbalance. And when imbalance becomes predictable, Formula One panics. Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of attacking the driver, the sport attacked the environment. New engines, new aero philosophy, new energy management rules. The idea was simple: reset the chessboard. But Verstappen doesn't play chess like everyone else. He plays speed chess, instinctively, brutally, and without hesitation. What most fans miss is that the 2026 regulations don't reward raw aggression. They reward adaptability under pressure. Energy deployment will vary corner to corner. Drivers will manually manage when to harvest and when to deploy electrical power. Active aerodynamics will change how cars behave on straights versus corners. And in a sport where milliseconds matter, decision-making speed becomes the new horsepower. That's Verstappen's territory. Former drivers and engineers have quietly admitted this. He processes grip changes faster. He adapts braking points instinctively. He thrives when the car isn't perfect. And in 2026, no car will be perfect. Not for years. But here's what nobody is talking about yet. That advantage comes at a cost, a massive one, because when a sport becomes too dependent on one driver's brilliance, it stops being about competition and starts becoming about containment. Ask yourself this: why have team principals become so vocal about 2026 uncertainty? Why have manufacturers hesitated? Why did Porsche walk away while Audi committed under strict conditions? Why is even Red Bull, the most dominant team of this era, nervous? The answer isn't just money, it's fear of being irrelevant. Red Bull Racing, led by Christian Horner, made a bold gamble by creating Red Bull powertrains in partnership with Ford. On paper, it's visionary. In reality, it's a high-risk bet that everything aligns by 2026. And here's the irony. Verstappen's excellence is both their greatest weapon and their greatest vulnerability. Because if Red Bull nails the engine, Verstappen could disappear into the distance again. And if they don't, Formula One faces a nightmare scenario. The sport's most valuable driver trapped in an uncompetitive car during a fragile regulatory transition. That's not good for ratings, not good for sponsors, and definitely not good for the narrative Formula One has been selling to new fans. This is where the pressure starts to build. Mercedes, once the kings of the hybrid era, are openly cautious. Toto Wolff has repeatedly warned that 2026 could create performance cliffs, moments where teams simply get it wrong and fall off entirely. Translation: the grid could split into haves and have-nots again. And if Verstappen lands on the right side of that split, we're back to square one. Now pause for a second, and if you're still watching, you might want to tap subscribe before Formula One rewrites history without you noticing. Don't worry, no pressure. Unlike Red Bull's power unit department right now. Here's the uncomfortable twist. Verstappen has already changed how teams recruit drivers. A raw speed alone isn't enough anymore. Teams are prioritizing mental resilience, adaptability, and a feedback precision. Qualities Verstappen weaponized years ago. Young drivers are now trained to manage energy systems in simulators before they ever race wheel to wheel. That's not evolution. That's imitation. And imitation is dangerous for a sport built on variety. Because when everyone chases one archetype, creativity dies, risk disappears, and unpredictability, the lifeblood of Formula One, fades. Ask yourself this: do you want a grid full of Verstappen-style drivers, or rivals who challenge him differently? This is where the cost becomes visible. Formula One has always thrived on contrast. Senna versus Prost, Schumacher versus Häkkinen, Hamilton versus Vettel. Different styles, different philosophies. Verstappen breaks that mold. He doesn't leave room for coexistence. He forces adaptation or extinction, and 2026 amplifies that effect. Active aerodynamics mean drivers must trust systems changing mid-lap. Energy deployment strategies mean race engineers will hand drivers more responsibility. Those who hesitate lose lap time instantly. Verstappen doesn't hesitate. He commits. And commitment at 300 kilometers per hour is terrifying if you're trying to sell safety and sustainability as the future. But here's the cliffhanger. What happens if Formula One realizes too late that it has built a sport only one driver truly understands? Because that realization would force a choice: protect competition or protect spectacle. We're already seeing early signs. Discussions about limiting driver inputs, standardizing certain systems, reducing variables under the guise of cost control. Each decision sounds reasonable in isolation. Together they form a pattern, a slow tightening of freedom, not because Verstappen broke the rules, but because he mastered them too well. Now let me ask you something. If Max Verstappen wins in 2026, but does it in a way that feels inevitable, does Formula One still win? This is the paradox at the heart of the sport's future. Verstappen is box office. He's authenticity in an era of branding. He races like the outcome matters more than the image. Fans love that. But dominance without drama eventually kills engagement. Formula One knows this. That's why the 2026 era is being marketed as a reset, not a continuation. New manufacturers like Audi promise fresh narratives. Sustainable fuels promise relevance. Active aero promises overtaking. But none of it guarantees rivalry. And rivalry is what makes legends. Here's the final cost nobody wants to confront. If Verstappen continues to bend eras around himself, Formula One may be forced to choose between organic greatness and engineered uncertainty, between letting history unfold or intervening to keep the show alive. An intervention in motorsport never comes without consequences. So when people say Max Verstappen changed Formula One forever, they're right. But not because he broke records, because he exposed the limits of the sport's ability to adapt to greatness. The 2026 rules won't just test engines and aerodynamics. They'll test whether Formula One still believes in letting the fastest driver win, even if it scares everyone else. Now I want to know what you think. Do you believe 2026 will finally level the playing field? Or will it cement Verstappen's legacy even deeper into the sport's DNA? Drop your take in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where fans stand on this. And if you want to understand how another driver could exploit these same 2026 rules in a completely different way, there's a video on your screen right now that connects directly to this story. Watch that next, because the future of Formula One might already be unfolding faster than we realize.